Very happy to have with us today Nate Hook, the outstanding tenor saxophonist and also multi-instrumentalist based in Philadelphia. On any given night, you can hear Nate doing quite a variety of things, from playing hard bop music with different instrumentations, but also playing electronic music. He's had the opportunity to play at some of the best jazz venues in New York City, also from Smalls to Zinc Bar. And you might recognize the names Ralph Peterson and Bruce Saunders being some people that he's gotten a chance to perform with over the years. So, Nate, good to see you. Thanks so much for being here with me.
Good to see you too, man. Cool podcast you got going on here.
I greatly appreciate it, and we're gonna catch up on a lot today. The first thing I wanted to ask you was about the variety of these tribute performances you do. So you'll do one night the music of Joe Henderson, but then another night you might focus on Larry Young's Unity Project. I'm sure you know you love their these compositions and everything, and love the songs in general. But did you feel like you wanted to do these performances because you wanted to just, the music affected you from those records so deeply? It's like, I really want to pay tribute to them. Or was it just, you know, I need to do something different? How'd you look at it at first?
Well, every now and then I play at Chris's downtown, which is like a great jazz club in Philly. And when I first moved here, I try to just play all my stuff, and it's like to New York people, I compare it to like smoke. Like people come out, they have a nice cocktail, the food there is really great, and you get what you pay for. So like it's not like a cheap date. It's not like the 55 bar where it's like divey, you go get a beer and just watch someone go in on the most dissonant odd meter stuff you can imagine. It's like people want to hear like some classic sounding stuff. And I think some people, in response to that, I wanted to play music that suited the venue, but I also wanted it to be, I didn't want to phone it in either. Just like some people are like, all right, whatever, we'll just call some standards and who cares. I wanted it to be kind of like, meaningful to me and hopefully to other people. So I just started, like, I had a connection to all the stuff I've done, I have some sort of connection to. So, for example, the Lee Morgan stuff, like, I have a lot of recordings of lessons I took with Mabern from back when I was at William Paterson. And he actually taught us some of the songs that are on that record. So, like, he taught us The Beehive. He taught us I Remember Brit. And then there's other songs on that record that I started to transcribe for myself. Like, for example, Aeon, AON stands for As of Now. That's another Mabern tune. He never taught that to me, but I just transcribed it. And then there's other tunes on that record. Like someone gave me a transcription of the Benny Maupin tune, Peyote, and I transcribed the uh, Jimmy Merritt. A bunch of the songs there are his, like Nomo and Absolutions. So yeah, that was that. And then I kind of like doing, like, I just wanted to do that one thing. And then that kind of went over well. Like people would show up and they're like, hey, I don't know who you are, but like I like this record, so I'm glad you're doing this. I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, great. And I think there's a place for that in jazz today. Like some things seem to be kind of forgotten about. Like we think that with the internet everything is just forever. There's that meme like with the internet everything is forever, but there's actually, I think, huge segments of the jazz tradition that are kind of fading from memory. And I don't know if Lee Morgan's Live at the Lighthouse is one of them, but like I was surprised no one had transcribed those songs before. You know what
Yeah,
I mean?
yeah, well, that's a great point. The only other time I had heard the Beehive played was actually when Harold Mabern played it at the Vanguard, but it was with his trio.
Yeah.
So to hear you doing that was pretty remarkable. I know the tune is it's easy task to play, and on you listen to the live record, it's incredibly fast, and the tempo just does not move. So do you when you play that song, do you try to go for that same level of just intensity overall and playing long, or you treat it just as you would treat playing your own music?
I mean, we tried to be faithful to the record. Like we did everything the same tempos and I mean, I didn't transcribe anyone's solos, but when you listen to a record enough, like it's gonna come through in your playing a little bit. Like I think I'm quite a different player than Benny Maupin, but um I mean, but as far as the head and the tempo and everything else, like we are pretty faithful to the original. Yeah.
No, no, that's great. And also the Joe Henderson tribute, I know as well. I saw your set list and was so excited to see that Caribbean Fire Dance was on there and that you call it No Me Esqueca instead of Recordame, that sort of thing. These little, it's
Yeah. You learn a lot doing the research. Like for that one, like I always wondered why that one version was not called Recordame, but apparently like a different record company had the copyright to the song at the time, but Joe still wanted to record it. So Nome Esqueca, I think, is Portuguese for do not forget me. So Recordame is Spanish for remember me. And then so he just changed it to Portuguese, do not forget me.
No,
And it's
that's
like,
so cool. And you've got an opportunity to do some of these great performances and to also kind of go outside of the, hard bop or straight ahead jazz and play electronic music. So you're definitely doing what you want to do artistically. A lot of artists look at the so to speak, the success when it comes to the commercial appeal of other genres in terms of, oh, the number of views or streams you might get on something. So, as a jazz artist, what does success mean to you at this point in your life?
oh, I mean, I think, I was thinking about this, like you asked me to be on the podcast. Like there's this quote that gets thrown around the jazz world a lot, like take care of the music and the music will take care of you. And I think like that can be analyzed in like a number of different ways. So I think Dizzy Gillespie originally said that. I don't know the full context, but I remember Tyshawn Sorey bringing it up in an interview that he gave, and he meant that kind of financially. Like I'm just going to worry about the music and the money's going to work out. And I actually think I think about it in one level deeper because from like 2019 basically till now, like with the lockdowns and stuff, I kind of changed careers. Not careers, but like I got a teaching certification, got a full-time teaching job. Um, so I was, and with the lockdowns, like nobody was playing in 2020. But then, I was doing a bunch of stuff, like making moves in that realm. Like basically, what does success look like? Success looks like is playing the music that I want to play and not being homeless. So,
No,
which,
that's great.
is like, I mean, to me, yeah, that's what it is. So I think a lot of people they get carried away with searching for like fame or honor or success in that sense, and you end up not playing the music you necessarily want to play, you know?
Yeah, it is about the when it comes to success, in my opinion, about playing the music that you want to play because once you go into doing certain gigs that it aren't you're not connected to the music, it can almost feel like a day job sitting behind a desk or something.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like I've always kept gigs separate, like ones that make money from ones that really fulfill me, which, there's probably someone else you might have on might think differently, which is fine, but this is the way I think about it. Like, I mean, you're not going to pay your bills playing Lee Morgan's Live at the Lighthouse. Um,
Eventually that could be, if it goes on its own direction, you never know, but it's good you're kind of separating the career and the art in a way that it just helps you look at like your true love of the music versus I need to not be homeless, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I think and like I do see that now like when I interact with people like I'm kind of playing again. Like I don't think I played any like real, what I would call real gigs from like 2020, 21, 2022, maybe like a couple until really like last year. But then I would like come out and see people I hadn't seen since like 2019. But there's this kind of like shared, I feel like when you take the music with a certain amount of seriousness, you both respect other people that treat it with a certain kind of seriousness, and also you get that in return. You know what I mean? Like it's a real community in that sense, and people they throw around this term community a lot when it's not warranted. They'll be like, "Oh, we're a community," and it's like, no, this is just an arbitrary group of people that with the slightest bit of conflict would break apart in a million pieces. But I think like when I come across people with like a deep love for the music, that no matter anything else, and I mean anything else, like you can still have a certain level of respect.
Yeah,
So
and I understand what you're saying about being a community because when the brief period of time I lived in New York, which was very short, I would try to stay out late and hang out stuff and I knew I'm like this is not for me, but I like having conversations like this that are, one-on-one that I can really this is what I want to hear about what the artist has to say versus, oh, I just played with this person and yeah, that person sucks and that
yeah.
club sucks, XYZ. I don't know if that you kind of relate to that or not.
Yeah, that and also the other extreme where people will just have like a smile plastered on their face and it's like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And they're like, "I'm great. You sound great. This is so fun." When they're not having fun. And then you're always just second guessing like, is this person being honest with me? Like, is this person really my friend, or are they just glad that I hired them for this gig? Or stuff like that. It was very hard to have like a very honest. I remember we used to joke around like everyone, you would go to these sessions and someone would vibe the heck out of you, and then they'd be like, "Oh, you sound great. Yeah, hope to play soon." And like they don't think you sound great and they don't ever want to play with you.
Yeah.
I think every time you tell a little lie, like a piece of your soul kind of dies. So it doesn't mean you have to be mean, but I'm just saying, like, when you treat the music with a certain amount of respect, like now when I go out to a session, I went out to a session recently, and like there was someone who didn't sound great, and I didn't say you sound great, hope to play soon. I was just like, "Hey man, good to see you out here. It was fun playing with you." And it was fun playing with him. And like trying to be positive yet real and not dishonest. You know what I mean? Like, and he was like an adult, like amateur who was just coming out to play a couple tunes. And it's like the scene needs people like that. I'm not going to vibe him because he's the second coming of Elvin Jones. You know what I mean? So like just trying to, I don't know, be reasonable about these sorts of things.
Yeah, you don't need to tell someone like you are not good and you really should quit versus I heard some things you were doing and maybe some refinement. There's a fine line between being mean and just kind of just being honest to help them in a sense.
Yeah, yeah. Or yeah, I mean someone like that who's just an adult hobbyist, it's like the scene, it really depends on people. Like you can't have a jazz scene that's just only people that are like doing this all the time. Like throughout jazz history, like Panonica, like she was like a countess, like, and she would put up these guys like Bird and Monk when they were out, like had no place to stay. So, you just want to be welcoming, but not be everything great, when you're not happy. Like just kind of try to be honest and authentic. I think authenticity is, especially with social media, it's like I have every gig, my life is perfect. But not complaining either, just being straightforward and honest, and yet also hopefully a cautious optimism and positivity.
No, no, it definitely sounds like you've given this some thought and are self-aware when it comes to those things. That being said, it takes a self-aware person to decide to go to music school and make a career out of it. I know you're from Texas, and I know you went to Willie P. I was actually supposed to go to Willie P, but we might have crossed paths, believe it or not. You never know. But it's one of the great schools for music. And I wanted to know what at what point in your life when you were younger did you say, I know what I want to do. There's nothing else I could see myself doing, and I'm gonna go pursue this in school. Do you remember there being a certain point, or
Oh
was
yeah. Um, I was always like pretty good at math, and like my parents pushed me to like get good grades and stuff. And I remember my senior year, I had like AP Calculus, AP Physics, AP English. Um, and on the plus side, I didn't have to take any non-music classes at William Paterson, but every night I would get home and I would literally have like 3.5, 4 hours of homework, just straight pile of papers. And one day I was like, I cannot do this. Like I had my music room, like it was this little room off the garage. I was just like, I just want to go practice my saxophone. Like I have no interest in doing physics. Physics was the one that really took the long time.
Yeah, I mean, we have to learn all these things that in no way, shape, or form that we will have nothing to do with that when we were
Yeah.
in high school. So you kind of took to it when you were in high school, getting more serious about it and everything, which is and you were self-aware about it. You went to William Paterson, which, as I mentioned, is a tremendous school for music. I know Harold Mabern was one of your mentors. I also know that you have sort of I like to find out more about your relationship with Ralph Peterson because I saw some clips of you playing with him, playing some of his music and everything, and Ralph, God rest his soul. So talk a little bit about Ralph Peterson, if that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, the whole way that that got hooked up actually was through Gary Thomas. So I think I had a friend who lives here. Well, I have a friend who lives here in Philly named Gustin Rudolph, really great drummer.
He went to
And
Rutgers, right?
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So I had a piano teaching job near Rutgers while I was at William Paterson. So I would go and hang out at the Rutgers jam sessions, and I got to know like some of those guys at Rutgers, and Gustin was one of those people. And we played a lot together during those years. And he was taking like lessons with Ralph. And I know Ralph was teaching at Berkeley. So Ralph would do these things where he would like show up at Rutgers and then Gustin would kind of arrange like 8 to 10 people to all take lessons with him in a row to make it worth his time. So that's when I first like really met Ralph personally. And then after living in New York, I did not really enjoy living in New York. I moved to Baltimore specifically to study with this saxophone player named Gary Thomas, who also had a big impact on me. But he was good friends with Ralph. And when I was getting those clips online, that's just like my recital from Peabody. Um, so Gary was like, Ralph is going to be in town. Like, why don't you see if you can get him to play on your recital? So that's what it was. But I had taken lessons with Ralph 3 or 4 times before that. And then I picked a couple songs and he gave us a couple songs. It's funny. There's one song of his we did. I can't remember it.
The
It
Art of
was
War.
well, no, there's one we did that I didn't post because it was
Oh,
like we got lost. Like he always called it a prison without walls. It was like, gosh, I'm kicking myself for not remembering, but like it was like this very difficult rhythmic figure, and you could stay within it and kind of be like stuck. And he was like, "Hey, you can do whatever you want." Like he was like, "It's a prison without walls." Like Ralph was the king of teaching with metaphor. Like I remember he would talk about like playing a solo and we were working on interaction. And so all I was doing was interacting. And he's like, stops and he's like, eventually, like, you got to just run down the field and score a touchdown. Like he had a metaphor for everything that would just explain everything perfectly. Or one time he put on a record, it was Joe Henderson Isotope on the Power to the People record with like Herbie Hancock. I think it's Herbie, Ron Carter, and Jack DeJohnette. And like they turn the beat around and Joe Henderson comes in, he's like beep, boop. And Ralph was like, this is like a boiling, simmering pot. And like Joe, he needs to just poke his finger in and see if it's like safe to come in. And like he was just such a good teacher about helping you understand jazz, not in purely technical terms, but in human uh, terms, which, I think like few teachers I've ever had that kind of gift. Or like even before we played my recital, he's like, all right, I have three ways of playing: jacket on and buttoned, jacket on but unbuttoned, or jacket off. And I was like, how about jacket on but unbuttoned? And he's like, okay. And that was him basically saying like, I'm not gonna go 100%, and like steamroll you. And I remember Gary coming up and being like, wow, like that was great, So he was great with that kind of stuff. Like few teachers I've ever come across really think about jazz in such like human terms. And I think you start off there, like when you're a kid. It's funny how you start. Like when I was a kid, I loved Charlie Parker and playing fast. Like I did a jazz camp and all I knew was the blues scale and I would just play it as fast as possible. And like even after all these years, like I still just kind of love playing fast, And that's okay. I don't think it's immature. Like it's just kind of this, I like the intensity, playing fast, like and other people like they might like something more slow and melodic, and that might be what really excites them. And you like you'll see these constant human elements, and I think sometimes we get overly technical and it's like you must leave space here or use these harmonic devices. And like people are generally going to gravitate towards whether they like music that makes them feel more calm, reserved, dissonant, consonant. Like these are emotional states. And just like we have character in our own personality, it's going to come through in your playing. So I think Ralph was good at kind of keeping that door open at the very least.
Yeah, and I don't see anything wrong with, playing fast or but I think I think you should just do what you want to do. And
Yeah.
if you get overly analytical about that, it's like I'm not going to mention like certain like methodologies I've studied before, but it's like when you start thinking about almost like to the like in the moment thinking about like an improvisational lead back, or I'm not going to play for this bar and I'm going to play in this bar, and then I will, like
Yeah.
it totally just ruins the whole point in my
It's a
opinion.
good way to practice, but like at a certain point, you need to let go and get back to those like deep human motivations that, make you want to play. Otherwise, you turn into a robot.
Yeah, well, speaking about motivation, I know you have, we talked about, some of your influences and growing up. Where do you draw inspiration from that's totally unrelated to music, at this point in your life? Where does it come from, you think?
I mean, I think like any serious study of the art, like I came to this realization a couple of years ago. Like I was reading a book, a famous book called The Brothers Karamazov by a Russian author named Dostoevsky.
Hmm.
And someone was like, "Oh, what's it about?" I'm like, "What's it about?" I mean, technically it's about these brothers, but like that's not really what it's about. You know what I mean? And it's like it would be like walking up to someone and being like, "Oh, you're listening to Love Supreme? What's it about?" You know? Like so basically I kind of come to this realization that like any study of the humanities is about the human condition, and that will always be and you can't categorize that. Like you can't systematize it. And we live in like this systematic age, right? Everything in social media is processed through an algorithm. Our interview right now is ones and zeros going across the internet. But really like the human condition and like the big questions of life, it's never going to be. So like when I what are my not your question was what are my non so literature, religion, like I really like reading old books by different saints and stuff. like The Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross, or like Augustine's Confessions. Like I think nowadays in education, everyone says, "Oh, everything's Eurocentric," but like I have three college degrees and we didn't read any of the Western canon. So I've been trying to like go back and read that. Like I'm in the middle of like J.R.R. Tolkien's translation of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. So I think,
No college courses on the stuff you're saying and what you want, the stuff that you probably could study these things in some way at a college, I would say, right?
yeah, I mean, yeah, but like in my three college degrees, I was never forced to read, uh Aquinas, Augustine, or Plato, or Aristotle. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
I
like,
didn't take any uh I love philosophy now, like because after college and grad school I started having like existential moments and stuff, and I'm like, and I got into philosophy. I'm like, yeah, philosophy course really would have been useful at some point to navigate the ins and outs of things.
yeah, I mean, there's a funny like interview. I wouldn't be able to find it again, but it's this woman, Camille Paglia, who's like a very eccentric thinker, and she's talking because she used to teach at U Arts, which is like a music school here in Philly.
Hmm.
Like, yeah, U Arts is basically a trade school. And I was like, what? And she's like, these kids, they come here and they're learning music and they're learning to work with their hands, and they're yeah, they're basically learning a trade, which is music. And there's some truth to that, like if you go to, especially ironically, I think at the higher end schools, like William Paterson was cool because I felt like the professors, solicited or not, gave you life advice. Like these guys like Mabern, Mulgrew, Vincent, Bill Goodwin, they had seen some stuff. And whether or not you agree with their life philosophy, they're going to be able to share their observations with you. And you would at least have food for thought. Like some things those guys would tell me, I'd be like, yeah, whatever. And then like 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, I'd be like, oh, I understand. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and it's when you say those names, it's like, Mulgrew and Harold Mabern, getting a chance to be mentored by them. It's such a privileged position. What's the, if you were to give someone advice who wanted to think about a career in music, what's the most valuable thing you think you could tell them?
Like they've already decided or they're thinking about it.
Let's do their thinking about it.
They're thinking about it. I would say, I mean, just understand that you you can get anything you want, but you can get anything you want, but you will have to make some kind of sacrifice. Just make sure you think through what it is, you're doing. Like that's kind of the decision I made in like 2019. It's like, um, do I want to get married and have a middle class lifestyle? Well, I'm not going to do that just like going all in on jazz. So I went and I got a teaching cert. Other people, they're like, I'm going to get a college job. So the sacrifice you may have to make for that is moving around the country or internationally to get a full-time job.
No, I don't
Or
think
maybe,
there's anything wrong with, doing that sort of work. One of my close friends who he's such a heavy musician. He's a music teacher in the public school system, and we always talk about, the how he gets his, benefits and he has that steady paycheck, but it does not affect his ability to go out at night and play jazz whatsoever. If anything, it kind of like makes it more like an escape in a sense and bring more to that, like, bring something else to the music, like, oh, I have this other, almost not an alter ego, but
it
it's
definitely does. I mean, it definitely does come in the way. Like I went out to a jam session on Monday, and like the rest of the week, I'm like, oh, I'm like drinking extra coffee to make up for it.
that's
So
just called getting older, I think.
So I mean that's what I would say. Like, if you really want to pursue the art to its nth degree, like you're gonna maybe have to make other sacrifices. I think back to all my professors, and just to frame this in a positive way, Harold Mabern was the only one I know, like of all my professors who like got married and stayed married.
Yeah, that's definitely something to be said. Well, Nate, I want to thank you. It's good to see you. I mean, I'd love to do this with you again, in the future. And I think you have a lot to say, musically and just talking and everything. And just want to thank you for being here.
Yeah, well, if you're out, where are you, Central, South Jersey?
I'm in Central Jersey now, yeah. But I make my way over to Philly every now and then. But
Not too
it's
far apart anymore.
no, no, definitely not.
Yeah, well, let's link up one of these days.
Absolutely.